Hello, everyone. Episode 15. It's so great to have you here. I'm Michèle Kline with Kline Hospitality, and I'm here with my co-hostess, Stephanie Ledger with First Rate Hospitality. How are you, Stephanie, today?
Very well, Michelle. We're up to number 15.
Up to number 15. That sounds fantastic. So we're here with a very touchy subject, and I'm sure that we will captivate all of our HR representatives, HR lovers out there, because we're going to talk about policy. So when policies slip, they become a slippery slope.
Oh, yes.
So let's walk through some of these pictures so then we can exit out and just have a conversation. On the first picture, we see two team members, one wearing light blue jeans and the other one wearing black jeans. We see someone sleeping on a couch. There's flip-flops on the ground.
Ripped jeans.
Socks, ripped jeans. Interesting. I'm really hoping that's not a team member. And we have beards, we have tattoos, we have fantastic uniforms for the wrong department. And we're also going to talk about a little bit, touch base on policies in regards to cell phone usage and tardiness or clocking in early, which could be a problem too.
Yes. Yep. Perfect.
So let me share with you my story on the picture that we just saw about the two team members wearing jeans. Jeans was not the problem. This was a restaurant, and I come in, and obviously first thing I do is I get policies and procedures so that I am familiar with what I'm going into and exactly what to look for. And I had been at this property for a couple of days by now, and I always saw that there were team members with black jeans and team members with blue jeans. And definitely jeans was the trend. Team member manual specified black jeans. So I gave a call to the general manager of the restaurant to try to understand which one is it. Have you changed your policy? What's going on? Because they all had new uniforms. They had new, really cute jean looking light colored denim aprons. And they had these cute shirts that were in line with the logo and everything, everything as far as an image of the brand, which was great. But then there was this confusion between front of the house, back of the house team members, and then you would see both in the front of a house of wearing black jeans or blue jeans. And I had this lengthy conversation with the GM where he explained in 1,000 languages that no, the policy calls for black jeans, and black jeans it is, and every single one of my team members is wearing black jeans, and I don't know where you're getting this from, which was quite interesting to me, because at the end of the day, I was there to assist. I was there to say, hey, this is what you haven't been seeing. How about we work on it together? And the conversation went south. Right? It was like, no, they're all wearing. So anyway, I had to prove my point. So I ended up taking that picture to show that clearly we have a disconnect. So we either need to retrain our team or adjust our team as to what those standards are, or we need to assess our policy, right? And how many times do we go into properties where the policy hasn't changed? Like, for example, tattoos.
Yep.
Tattoos follow. There's many hotels that nowadays are actually accepting it as long as it's not something that is offensive. But because the policy hasn't been reevaluated and then executed on, you still see it out there. So anyway, that's my story. Stephanie, walk us through yours, and then we'll take a deep dive into tattoo policies and beers and everything else.
Oh yeah, so my story, it's a doozy. So here I am going through an audit, and I am at the restaurant, and they have basically like a private dining area, but it has clear windows so you could be able to see inside. And so this is now in the morning time and having coffee, what I needed to be able to inspect. And I'm looking around and I see that there is an employee that is laying there and basically just sleeping over his hangover from the night before. And at first I was like, oh wow, is that a guest that they haven't been able to move yet? But then 15 minutes later, he gets up and goes to the back of where the coffee is, back behind the counter, and makes himself a little breakfast and then goes back. And all the employees start talking to him. So they obviously know that he is an employee. And then he also, too, I saw him then, he got there before his shift and then went over, clocked in, and then went back to the couch to then hang out after his breakfast and still hang out. And as you can see, wearing the ripped jeans, the sandals, and also too the employees, like, where is the leadership or even the supervisor to being like, hey, you have to go? And I'm surprised not even other guests were complaining about it, because it definitely was a scene to be seen. And a WTF moment where I'm like, okay, here I am inspecting. Am I on candid camera? Because this is going on. Right.
He definitely took it seriously when he was hired and he was told, we want to make sure that you feel at home.
Literally.
So not only he was sleeping on the job, but he was wearing ripped jeans. So ripped jeans, was that okay with policy, or was it against policy?
I would assume that it's not okay because everyone else had just regular blue jeans. And this is also too part of a franchise company too. So they're pretty much all the standard of the blue jeans.
And then my personal favorite, which took me back in, like, it was another Ratatouille moment, took me back to my days in Hawaii, where our team member shows up with flip-flops.
Yeah. Yes. Yes.
Flip-flops and socks, ripped jeans, feel at home, have your coffee, take your nap, you're all good.
Yep. And breakfast too. Breakfast as well as part of the employee meal, we could say.
It's crazy. So again, we go back to the fact that our team members will do whatever they want to do if we are managing behind a desk.
Yes.
If you're not walking the floors, you don't see stuff like this happening.
No.
And your guest does.
Yeah. And you want your employees also too to feel comfortable to saying, hey, I'm actually busting my butt, working with it's coffee time in the morning, and here we have a line, and I'm making sure that these guests are being taken care of. Meanwhile, while my coworker is just being able to, be the weakest link of the team, and then now not being able to saying, hey, I don't want to get in confrontational with the other employee, but I need to be able to tell someone what's going on because this isn't right.
Absolutely. And that is 100% the main point when it comes to policies. It makes no sense to have a policy that you're going to allow some team members to break and other team members not to, because you're going to go against your culture. You're going to damage your culture. You're going to ruin your engaged team members, and then your efforts of trying to have a team that works as a team goes to waste.
Yep.
That's great.
And if you're trying to, you'd say you're also too, you're short staffed and you're being like, hey, if you have anyone that, you know, in the industry that you're recommending, we're still, you know, needing to fill positions. And what do you think those other employees are going to be able to tell, you know, their friends or their connections of who they know? They're going to be like, oh, this is a walk in the park. You're going to get away with everything. Or I wouldn't recommend there. I don't even know why I'm working there because of knowing what else is on policies that aren't being set forth and consistent for everyone.
And how many times have you had situations where your lower level management feels like they are not going to apply or enforce a specific policy because perhaps they were just promoted from being a lead person to a supervisor, so they still have their buddies in the team, or they don't feel empowered to actually enforce a policy, and how seeing it from that perspective is actually a detriment to the entire operation.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Seen it many times, especially with the line level employees taking that next step and being promoted to a supervisor or assistant manager, and now they're, you know, have gone through their training and it's their first week now running the team by themselves, and then the other team members, they feel like they can be able to take advantage of it, and making sure that you as the leader are setting the expectation right from the beginning of being like, hey, you we're celebrating, I'm, you know, being able to take this position, but it's the same respect as we would have with any of our other managers, that we need to making sure that respect is still happening between the supervisors and the line level employees.
Yeah, great point. All right, so do we want to talk about beards?
Oh yes, beards and tattoos.
Beard tattoos. How many times does the policy change, but it doesn't change? It drives me crazy. You
Yeah.
say yes to this, no to this, but then when it comes to having it on paper, we just don't do it.
Yes.
Why
Yeah.
do we not do it?
And you know, I think, well, first off, a lot has changed between the traditional grooming standards, and traditional standards meaning about, say, pretty much about 5 to 7 years ago that they started to change. And I think the reason why this was starting to change is because also to just a newer generation was entering into the workforce, and they weren't brought up a traditional way how we would know in the workforce, and so and the departments, they needed bodies to be able to fill the positions, and so that one thing had to, you know, give in, and this was an area where beards and tattoos were now starting to be acceptable of being shown. But then it started off lightly of being like, okay, your beard had to be, you know, a certain length, and well kept maintained, and your tattoos could only be in certain places on your body, depending of what uniform that you were wearing. And now it's just gotten to where there is no policy with it. I mean, you can just have beer lengths at all different sizes, or not maintained, and then just, you know, tattoos wherever they want to be. And I get it. Hey, I am one that's all about, you know, it's expressing yourself, and but at the same time though, is we want to making sure that we're seeing the uh personalities being able to show of our employees, but in a consistent way too. Of being like, okay, food and beverage, they're allowed to being able to have their beards and tattoos being shown, but now front desk is being reprimanded because they're not allowed to, you know. So we want to making sure that that's where we're seeing the departments or your property as a whole, that the accountability is there for everyone in every department, just not single individuals being pointed out.
Absolutely. I also would like to add that looking at this from the perspective of the brand,
Yeah.
right? So we have to adapt. You adapt or you die. Simple as have to evolve. Our labor force is changing and we have to change with it. But I think that in many instances, what we see out there is that the brand starts losing their core values or they start losing their identity.
Mm-hmm.
They lose their identity in an effort to evolve. And there, it's really not necessary to lose your identity in an effort to evolve. As long as you are evolving the right way and making sure that you adapt these policies and procedures to match or to be in alignment with your brand, then your guest is still going to feel welcomed and is still going to feel however they thought they would feel when they associated your brand to your product or service, right? But making sure that team members also understand this. So when we talk about allowing team members to have tattoos or to have beards, what does that mean? And sometimes in HR, we go down this rabbit hole and provide team members, and we do it in operations too. We provide team members with 100,000 different examples of the yes and the no,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
I think that at certain times we have to get a little more involved to ensure that things are simpler.
Yes.
Because what happens next? If you give your team members 500 options, then they're going to find the 501 and they're going to say, but that one wasn't listed.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at the list of 500 options of shoes in there, and this one wasn't listed. So it's okay for me to use it or to wear it.
Yep.
So we have to be more creative. Same way we adapt our policies, we have to be more creative in the way we present those to our team members and help them understand the reasoning behind it. Why is it that this is acceptable and this is not acceptable? So they can use their own judgment to make sure that the brand identity is not being lost in the process.
Yeah. And communicating, it's all about communicating as well, not just during the onboarding. You're handing them the handbook and reviewing the policies and then never talk about it again, but re-energizing to the team about this is our brand identity and this is the reason why we have certain policies the way that we do. And then also too, it's just a refresher. So maybe we're getting into the winter months, and so the gentlemen want to be starting to grow their beard, or maybe it's in the summer months and now the uniform is changing, and so we need to making sure that we're having that communication to the employees instead of getting to the day of and now they're in the office and now having a discussion about it, and they're like, there was no one that told me yes, no, maybe so.
Exactly.
Oh, those. And then also too is becoming, as we're talking about with the beards and tattoos, but then even too with jewelry and nail color and shoes as well. How you're talking, yes, there's the 500 shoes, but having all of those communications so the employees understand.
And if you want to avoid a WTF type of moment with your team members on the policies, all you have to do is walk the floors.
Yes, yes. That's it. It's simple as that.
Just your policies.
Yeah. All right, so now we're going to talk about also too with your uniforms matching your departments. So how many times, Michèle, have you seen in valet, they have their crisp button-up shirt, and then by the time they retrieve your car, it's no longer a crisp button-down shirt?
And it's almost like, who's thinking of this uniform? Like, have you ever considered the type of job that these guys will be doing or this doing, right? So how important is it to comprehend, especially for the companies out there that are the vendors of these uniforms, get in tune with what the needs are.
Yes. Yes.
It's important for all the uniform vendors out there. I'm talking to you right now. get in tune with what the needs are for that department specifically. What does that role look like? What will they be doing? Are they going to be leaning? If that's the case, you have to be careful with the length of the dress, or you have to be careful with, right? Are they running around all day long in 100 degrees heat or 80 degrees with?
And are they writing it down too? Okay, pants without pockets.
Seriously.
But yes, definitely, you want to making sure that the employees feeling comfortable in their uniforms based upon what their job duties are. But then also too, the material of the uniform as well is, comparable to based upon the weather. So you have your summer uniforms versus your winter uniforms. But
especially considering the humidity.
Yes. Oh, yes. But then also too, now are they coming back, halfway through their shift? Are they still in that crisp uniform when they started at the beginning of the shift based upon what their normal job duties are? And now they halfway through the shift, now the ambiance or, the perception when you're walking into, maybe it's the restaurant or you're walking out to the porte cochere, and now it looks not crisp and flowing with the way that the department looks like.
Yes, indeed. So consider functionality.
Yes. Yeah.
That's our nugget for today. Consider functionality.
Yeah. And ask for your feedback too from the employees, being like, hey, we're getting ready, in our budget, we're going to be updating our uniforms. We're looking at different uniforms. And yes, we know that the ownership has a lot of say with it, but getting that feedback to already knowing of saying, okay, if they're already wanting this type of material, we need to making sure that we need to say this and this reason of why it may not work. Actually, it will not work for our department, and let's look at some alternatives.
So if I was to ask you, Stephanie, which department is the pickiest when it comes to what they specifically want as part of their uniform, what would you say?
I would say front desk, front of the house, really, they want to be styling, but then they want to, not wear a jacket, even though jackets are required after 6 p.m. Or their length of their uniform as well. They're very, very hard to making sure that we can get it right for them. How about you? What department would you think?
All right, curveball. Drum roll, housekeeping.
Really?
OMG. I have been through many repurposes of uniforms, right?
Yeah.
Both front of a house, F&B, back of the house, engineering including.
Mm-hmm.
Housekeeping is the one department that they are all in alignment as to specifically what they want and need. And they will give you a whole rundown as to why. And I want the pockets because of this. Yeah. And I carry it over here. And this has to be loose because when I do this, it's awesome. So great feedback from your team members when you're trying to figure out what the best type of uniform is, what the best material is. Should it have pockets? Should it not? As long as you're keeping it in line with your brand identity.
Yes, absolutely. And also too, colors as well, of making sure, okay, if you're resorts and you're using, some, I call it Miami pink, but is this really a color that you would be using up in New York? Or also too, is this a color that would show more if there's pen marks or if you're in the restaurant and you want to, kind of have a floral design, so it's, maybe offsetting some stains that may come up throughout the day of your shift. So that's another thing too, is not just with the material, but the color goes with your brand and with the departments too.
That's a good one. Do you want those team members to be seen? Do you want those team members not to be seen?
Yeah.
I've seen some properties in various areas here on the West Coast since 2020 that they have moved their team members who specifically clean and sanitize their floors, not so much back of the house like or heart of the house like housekeeping, but mainly like the public spaces or the gaming floors, where you want to see them, and they transitioned over to very flashy tops for their team members. So you see, I've seen orange, I've seen yellow, I've seen red in properties that typically were wearing blue, light blue, black. So that's been interesting too, because we wanted to make sure that the guests were seeing how the cleaning crew was out there and taking care of what was most important to our guests at that point. So cool. All right, so let's talk about cell phone usage. And that's a very fun one, cell phone usage. There's always emergency, right? And then let's talk about, being clocking out late and or clocking in early.
And it's all, let's start with cell phone. We'll end it on the clocking one. So with the cell phone, nowadays too, the departments, they have apps, that they may be using to find out what the call is next, where they need to go, guest name, that if they're going up to a room, or just the various of information is now, okay, here you can have your cell phone and utilize the app to being able to get this information. And then you can see that your employees are starting to now be watching a TikTok video, and you're like, well, you said I could use my phone, but obviously just for the app. But now how do you making sure that you're setting the standard and the policy in place and being consistent for all of your employees when you're seeing them utilizing their phone?
So you just get a nerve. On the West Coast and in many other areas in the country except South Florida, it's not very common that you will allow a team member to use their personal phone for specific job-related applications. Like, for example, getting to find out what room you have to go next, or whatever the case may be, right? Whichever apps are out there that we use on devices. But then when I do work in South Florida, I realize this is common practice. Every team member uses their phone, right? So how do you define that line? What were you doing on your phone? Right? Typically we would, we when we have devices out there on the floors, we make sure that they have these, otter cases or any cases that are super strong and they're rubbery, and if they fall, it won't break. But now you don't see that because everybody has a different case. And so how do you know if it's their phone or if it's the company device in that case when they're using the same one? What are they doing on their phone?
And communicating. Everyone's utilizing WhatsApp because you're able to utilize it using the hotel Wi-Fi. Which, from our standpoint,
you will know that's a terrible idea.
Yes. But that's, it's
a cool practice. I know. It took me time.
Yeah. And, and especially here in South Florida, I think, WhatsApp is probably the number one app that is used, especially for communication. And, even with that as well, like you were saying, though, it's like, okay, now we've seen the employee, they're utilizing their phone. You give them the warning of saying, okay, I see, and I'm letting you know what I see. And then not even 10 minutes later, you see them and they're still on their phone. And, now how can you making sure from an HR standpoint that you're like, obviously I know that you are not on utilizing the phone for a company reasoning. And then being able to say, okay, now we're going. And you know what, though, is a lot of times what I see is the employees, they all of a sudden will start posting on social media, and I'm like, oh, you posted this while you were on shift.
The cell phone usage and cell phone policies is a whole new episode.
Yes.
There's so much to talk about that, so much to address, so much for management out there to comprehend the reasons why it should not be best practice, period, right? And then how many times have you had team members that were actually on the phone as opposed to check something, and then you bring it up to their attention. Sorry, it's like language barrier. I'm like exchanging things in my mind. So you bring it up to their attention, and they're like, yeah, but it was like my cousin who's da 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 da, and they give you this whole explanation of this medical emergency and this and that, and you're like, is as simple as you letting me know that you are expecting a phone call, and it's okay, or coming back and saying, hey, I just want to let you know that I was on the phone, it was a medical emergency, or it was an emergency from a family member, whatever the case may be. You go out to a back of the house area where the guest won't see you. The guest doesn't know if you're on an emergency call or not.
Yes. Yeah. And I think that's where we're seeing a lot of it right now, is in the public area, up on the guest floors, where the guest is seeing you. And I've even seen it during audits, and I can just see that either they're texting away, where I'm like, you're not writing a novel to your manager, you're definitely writing something to a friend, but then also too, their ringer goes off as well, and it'd be like some music.
I'm sexy and I know it.
Yeah.
What? 3 a.m. walking a property, right?
Yeah.
Beautiful property in Scottsdale, Arizona. So imagine the caliber, right? I'm sexy and I know it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, no. Definitely no.
Yes, yeah. So we'll definitely have to continue this conversation on the phone usage and all of our WTF moments as well that we've come across when we've been in operations, but then also too on the other side. And oh yeah, I'm sure we'll have some great stories of that. But we want to keep this short and sweet for our viewers. So our last thing that we're going to go over real quick is clocking in and that early and later. But you know, once you go down that slippery slope of letting it happen between one employee and not the other, or on some days it's fine and other days it's not, you know, then
unless California, where the rules are very, very strict.
Yeah. and New York. But yeah, here in South Florida, we call it Miami time. So yeah, so I think this is one probably policy that I see the most going down the slippery slope, is because you're like, okay, we just, you know, front desk, we just got a bus coming in for arrivals, and you're waiting to clock in. Okay, clock in early now, and now you see them coming in on a Saturday, and it's not as busy at the front desk, and they're like, oh, well, why can't I clock in? I just got here. And then the other employee's like, oh, if I would have known that case, I would have came in 10 minutes earlier. I just live down the street. So it's definitely a slippery slope of the clocking in early and then clocking in later and milking the clock.
Yeah, exactly. So there are ways where your human capital management system or your payroll system, whatever platform you're using to track time and attendance, there is a way to create some rules that will determine when that clock in or clock out will be captured by the actual platform, or will round it up in one way or another, right? Yeah. But communicating that with your team is also important, because next thing you know, they'll come to you with their little notebook, and you know this happens. Everyone out there, you know this happens. They'll come to you with their little notepad saying, but this day I clocked in at this time and this time. Well, but guess what? the cloak will round it up. So it all boils down to communication. If we're not communicating our policies the right way, then we're creating extra work for everyone else.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're just now deteriorating your employee department culture as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, this was great. Very enlightening, Stephanie, as always. It's good to see you. And we will see everyone next week.
Yes.
We have a very cool subject for next week, but we're not going to say anything, but it's in line with what's coming up from a seasonal perspective.
Oh, yes. Fun times. Well, this is great, Michèle. Thanks again. Always nice to see you too. And then I'll see you on the flip side when we walk the floors again.
Sounds good. Bye, everyone.